You know, Charles, it's quite strange. I still have no direct evidence of interference, but sometimes the things that go wrong and the times that they go wrong and the difficulty in resolving them is so coincidental.
Yeah. Well, today's a day of mayhem around the world, as we intimated, I think, in the Sunday broadcast. You have not only massive structural problems unwinding or coming into view, I should say, in China, that have, at the same time as the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has decided to exert influence in the Middle East and against shale producers, you have setbacks in China, depressing demand for oil, just as the oil kingdoms are flooding the market with oil, leading to a dive in the price of oil, leading to extreme anxiety and stress in the debt markets. Anybody who's lent to these big oil producers.
High anxiety, Charles?
Extremely high anxiety, exactly. We should have called it that. And so, on top of which we have this coronavirus, which I think is being mismanaged by not the Trump administration, but by the media bloodhounds who openly, in some cases, been talking about a coronavirus panic will be good for Democrats.
What?
On one of the channels, I forget which one.
But even though their candidates are all in the high-risk group of being already almost dead?
Exactly. So, so there's a lot of mayhem going on around the world, and we're here today to try to help people think through it.
Right. And we'll be looking forward to doing that. I had so many great things planned that I wanted to talk about, but an incredibly stressed out 20 minutes of trying to figure out why we were going live has sapped me of witticisms. So
well, I doubt that. We'll get you back in form, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So this is a movie, the original movie, Trading Places, is a movie that was directed by John Landis, and his sister, his wife is the sister of a high school friend of mine who worked with my ex-wife at Salomon Brothers, where this was filmed. The trading floor episodes were filmed at Salomon Brothers on the very trading floor where my ex-wife worked.
Wow.
And actually my friend is in this movie, in the pivotal scene where the orange juice futures are going up and down. He's one of the guys going like this.
I mean, it was an amazingly funny film and I enjoyed it, but as you're talking about all the stock market stuff, I imagine if you watch this now, it's quite dated in terms of the way the stock market works, and all those guys with their, like doing all the hand signals, all that's over, right?
Well, what has happened is that the wizards of Wall Street, and I put that in quotes, have managed to, I would argue, increase the demand for a dwindling number of securities, thereby pushing the prices up, and also doing so in a way with light touch regulation, too light touch regulation, I would argue, that promotes volatility. And in days when prices rocket up and then rocket down and rocket back up and who knows where they're going to end up, those are days where sophisticated traders are going to make money, and a lot of it. So I think we picked the title for today's presentation, not so much about the Wall Street alone, but really more for this issue of the only person who believes at this stage that Joe Biden is going to end up as a credible candidate for dog catcher.
Is Jill Biden.
And maybe not Dr. Jill Biden, Doctor of Education. I mean, perhaps people on The View, Whoopi Goldberg et al. I mean, I have told people that I make a regular practice ever since June of 2012 when my ex-wife was diagnosed with various types of cancer. I changed my habits and I started walking around the city as much as possible to get exercise every day. I'm not one, I love tennis, I love skiing. You can't just easily play tennis and go skiing, but you can walk instead of taking a taxi or a bus or whatever. And in the course of doing that, because I do it so frequently, I now, I don't know, but I recognize the oddballs that are in Manhattan all over the place. And I'm no expert in politics, but I promise you, I could take we could have a game, pick the oddball to be president.
Right.
And I could, in
Better
the space of a
candidate
week,
than Joe.
yeah, including these candidates who will just, they'll be sitting there normally at McDonald's drinking their coffee, and the next thing they know, they start yelling about the CIA is trying to get me. They don't yet say, you dog-faced.
Could be true.
You dog-faced pony soldier. It's just, this guy, he embodies everything that is wrong with the establishment and both parties. This is a lifelong political hack whose grifter family, just like the Clinton grifters and the Bush grifters and other grifters, whose grifter family has been close to the tap where all the money comes flowing out to friends of the politically connected for so long. They are so emboldened that they think they're going to get away with anything, and people see through this. And the way this Biden character treats people who ask him fair questions. I mean, this guy has absolutely no power right now. He doesn't hold a political position, and he's behaving like this. Imagine what this Yabaho would be like if he, God forbid, ever became president of the United States. I mean, this guy, he couldn't pass a dementia test, in my opinion. He could not pass a sanity check. He has, when you look at his record, he has anything that you want to say that is screwed up, or maybe we should say effed up, about American foreign policy, just go right into the grill of Joe Biden. He has gotten every major foreign policy decision wrong that he's ever had anything to say about. And that's before we get into the stimulus program, the domestic programs, and Obamacare. I mean, this guy is a walking, talking train wreck who he could not, frankly, he's lucky that his son was on the board of Amtrak, because I don't think this guy, I mean, there are plenty of people who work hard at Amtrak. I don't think this guy could be a luggage handler at Amtrak, let alone a train engineer, let alone president of the United States.
I think we should start hitting his push-up prowess,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
he can't even do that.
He probably can't.
Well, all insults and joking aside, I think this is a serious issue, because I was watching, sometimes these cell phone videos that we see are a more interesting way to evaluate the candidates, because when they're on stage, somebody's been doing their hair and their makeup, and he's prepared and he's ready. I mean, it's stating the obvious to say, I saw him on a cell phone video of somebody talking to him. He literally did not look like he looked like he did not know where he was going. 3 people around him just to get him into a car to make sure that he was okay. I mean, I felt like somebody was picking up grandpa from the hospital, not the guy who was going to have the most stressful and important job in our country. There he is. I have zero confidence in Joe.
Yeah, and you think about it. This is a guy as more important. I mean, they had on Free Republic, which is a great news channel, frankly, or it's a compendium of news articles. And I saw it, I think, yesterday or maybe the day before. They had somebody referring to the national strategy to elect Joe Biden is hide the geezer. Make sure that you keep him out of public view. And I mean, that's just like what happened with Hillary in 2016. Her strategy was, she's got it locked, she's got it rigged, I'm not going to screw this up, I'll just stay at home in Chappaqua and drink myself silly, and then try to collect myself the evening of the election so that I can bark out orders and then move into the White House. I mean, and that didn't work so well for her. So again, I do think what the Democrats are doing here is actually most likely a very devious plan. I think what they realize is that Barr and Durham and maybe others in the Justice Department, the IRS, have in fact been looking into the 2015-16 election cycle and more deeply into the Clinton Foundation and other long-standing corrupt schemes that tag so many people across not simply the Obama administration, but also the W. Bush administration and earlier administrations. And the swamp is terrified that Trump is actually going to have a Spike Lee do the right thing moment and take all these people down. So as a defense mechanism, they took a guy who literally was, who was that guy on Howard Stern? Was it Stuttering Joe Menendez or whatever? We got
Stuttering John.
Stuttering John Menendez. Yeah, Stuttering Joe. Stuttering Joe Biden. The guy was down for the count 2 weeks ago. Suddenly he's unstoppable.
I know.
And do we believe that these primary vote totals are actually are legitimate? Where in Texas, I think Dallas, they found 44 thumb drives that had worth of votes in a big populous county that weren't counted?
Listen, nothing corrupt ever happens in Dallas.
No,
so
of course not.
couldn't possibly be anything wrong with voting thumb drives. I don't know. Charles, it's so, what's the word I'm looking for? Disparaging to just look around and consider how just people believe anything that's on the news, and the news has gotten to a point where they'll just say anything.
Well, you know that song, you may not know it, by Anita Baker. It's called "'Cause I'm Giving You the Best That I've Got."
Yeah, I know that.
I mean, it would be pretty funny if we could do it, to get a cover of that song and then put the least flattering pictures up of the various candidates that the Democrats have put forward here. I mean, this team, I mean, you think about it. You've got a big country, you know, even though Biden said we killed 150 million people with guns.
Who did that?
That's Biden said that guns have killed 150 million people in America. We actually still have 325 million people left or thereabouts. I mean, that's
how many, was it 150,000 or what's the number?
Probably, it's not even. I think when you look at it's a very morbid thing to look at, but the FBI puts out crime statistics, and when you look at gun deaths, it's a large number, but then when you take out suicides, which
just the ones attributed to Hillary Clinton alone, it's going to reduce that number by half.
Sadly, suicides it's a large number, and mostly with guns. So, but when you look at the number, there are many other causes of death in this country that are much greater. There you have it, I think. So here's total firearm deaths. And what is it, in 2018, 14,000 deaths? So Joe got it a little wrong, you know. But I guess when you're a family of thousands of generations,
150 million, that's close enough. It's a rounding error.
I ought to be president.
Yeah.
You know, Corn Pop. I was with Corn Pop, and you know, I liked people to touch my hairy legs, and you know. But you look at this, the various total firearms. Actually, it's less than I said. Handguns is what you see it there. It's 6,000. The top. Handguns 6,000. Total firearms 10,000. Knives 1,000.
Why are knives in the? I guess it's homicide, not just gun death.
Yeah, but when you actually, there's another version of this that takes out suicides. That's homicide. Maybe that's just those murders alone. So that's murders 14,000. If you look at violent crime, does that have? We don't have to do it now. But anyway, it's certainly not 150 million Americans killed by guns.
You'd notice that.
Right. And then you have this question of, so we have 325 million left after the violent gun crime scene alleged by the genius Joe Biden.
Right.
And let's assume that 35% of the adults are independent, because that's about what it is now. And let's assume that let's assume it's divided equally. It's roughly 30% each, Republican and Democrats. Are you telling me that of all the candidates in the world, the best you can come up with is one guy who is so corrupt and dumb that he doesn't know that he's corrupt and dumb?
Right. And
the other guy, Bernie Sanders, is not even a Democrat. And he rejects capitalism and loves Cuba. Those are your two best candidates? So, I mean, it's got to be that the Democratic establishment is either written off 2020 or is thinking that the way to get Hillary across the line is to have Biden stumble so badly that he can't finally get put back up in a chair, and that Michelle and Hillary and others fight it out, and Hillary, with all her lust for power, gets inserted into the slot. And then they do their level best to rig 2020 in a way that they couldn't rig 2016. I mean, it's not, to me, it's not a crazy theory that some in the Democratic establishment may be thinking this would actually work.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work, Charles, and I am convinced that they're going to try to slip in Hillary or Michelle or something terrible. I just detect something weird.
There's a
coming.
disturbance in the force.
It's just not normal what's happening. All this stuff with Buttigieg and his app counting the votes, and then him texting Joe. He was channeling Joe in that moment because he texted the wrong person, having his own little telecommunications, forgetful, who knows what.
I mean, it's so contrived. I mean, who is name the genuine candidate in the amongst the Democrats? I mean, there's Andrew Yang is in outer space. I mean, he should be a candidate to go live on Mars. I kind of feel sorry for Tulsi Gabbard in a way. I think she's not somebody I could support to be president of the United States. I don't think she has the qualifications or the right prescriptions for what to do going forward. But she is an announced candidate who did qualify for the most recent debate.
And they didn't let her in.
And they changed they changed the rules, even though she had qualified, to say, you know what, you're not in. And now Jim Clyburn, the kingmaker in South Carolina, is saying, we don't need debates anymore. F debates. And James Carville is saying, let's just wind this sucker down. It's Joe Biden. Joe's in. I mean, this is the Democratic Party. I mean, this is not Democratic.
It's not the Politburo doing that?
Exactly. This isn't like the Communist Party
Kim
of China.
Jong-un is appointing his uncle?
Exactly right. I think I will appoint myself.
Crazy.
Anyway, so without any further ado, perhaps we should. Excellent job from the art department, and thank you for that. And let's quickly just talk about some of the issues here. The first issue that I remember from listening to supposed political experts is that a bruising primary, a long bruising primary process actually tends to be a good thing for the winning candidate, because the winning candidate gets the experience of doing well under withering and tough questioning. Joe Biden, I mean, if Donna Brazile got back into the mix and gave Joe Biden both the questions and the answers to the questions in any debate with Donald Trump, he would come out making stuttering John Menendez look good. I mean, Joe Biden would destroy himself. He'd do a faceplant, even with the questions and the answers against Donald Trump.
Do you think you and I have sufficient political influence to somehow motivate a debate between Joe Biden and stuttering John Menendez?
I think we could manufacture one. I don't know if we could.
He could be, I think stuttering John would be a better Democratic candidate than Joe Biden.
I think you're right. So that's, on the one hand, he hasn't been vetted properly. And I mean, there's Brian York, who's a columnist for, I think the top Washington columnist for Washington Reporter for the Washington Examiner, and I think is a very sober and fair-minded guy. He has a column that I didn't link in today, basically saying there's no freaking way that Joe Biden will win. None. I mean, he's done. He's a consummate Washington insider with a grifter family, and he's supposed to be the polished gabmeister. In reality, he's a disaster. He's a gaffmeister. And that's before you start thinking about the various and sundry scandals in which his family's involved, whether it's through his brother or his son or whatever. And these scandals don't just involve tiny little countries. On the one hand, I think it involves China, as Trump likes to say. And, I went back into the mix. We talk about the Clinton Foundation dates, October 23, 1997. I think it was either October 27th or 29th, 1997, that the Clintons had a state dinner for the government of China. Right as they were putting together this Clinton Foundation. You can imagine what, the discussion was like at that state dinner. There'll be a no on the bat soup. But here's the wiring instructions to our new foundation that we're creating here so you can put money into. I mean, so China has been a long-standing, I would argue, center of corruption that has been well able to send money towards people like the Bidens, towards the Clintons, towards the Bushes, Lord knows perhaps towards the Obamas and others. And you have Rudy Giuliani, you have John Solomon, you have Bull Durham, and the others, all vectoring in on Biden for whatever may have happened in China and in the Ukraine. Those scandals likely touch the Clintons as well. And you're at this stage in March. I mean, the 60-day rule is supposed to kick in before the election, which is November 3rd. So you're talking more like September 4th or thereabouts. We have a long time between today and September 4th for this.
No, wait a second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before we get to Joe Biden in China, aren't the Clintons and Chinese corruption going together like PB&J because they had that guy Charlie Tree.
Oh, a long list of them.
When Bill Clinton appointed the son, literally, of a Waffen SS Nazi officer to be the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I'm talking about John Shalikashvili, he sent him to China with the instructions to share U.S. military secrets. I've heard from many different sources that the entire Chinese space program was based on secrets from the United States and missile technology and rocket engine technology that the Clintons sold to China.
Yeah, well, actually, it goes even deeper to that. I believe that, and I've heard this from multiple sources, I bear no ill will against the people of Arkansas, but I've heard from on multiple different levels that state laws in Arkansas are so poorly drafted and state regulations so poorly enforced that for decades, companies that wanted to get around the tougher rules and laws that exist in states like New York and elsewhere would site their factories in Arkansas. Similarly, foreign countries that wanted to get into, like China, that wanted to get into the US would decide to use Arkansas as one hub to first land their people here and then insinuate those people around the country.
Wow.
And so there's no question that the Chinese took an interest in young Bill Clinton when he was Attorney General and then governor, well before he became president. So the notion that the Chinese have been let's say, using the Clintons, and the Clintons, in theory, using the Chinese in exchange of money for influence, is an obvious thing to investigate. But of course, who was the strong team that might have done that? It's either, Mueller or Comey, and so as we get distracted in these relatively small scandals, I mean, the Clinton Foundation itself is a gigantic one, but facets of did Hillary Clinton send classified information on her toilet bowl server to unvetted devices? That's a serious national security set of issues. But even more serious is how much money might grifters around the Clintons have collected, and how did they arrange to collect the money to sell out this country to the rising power, or the rising adverse hostile power, China and or Russia? I mean, these are big questions. Who's got as Curtis Lewa says, he's got the onions to run for mayor. Who's got the onions to stand up and get into this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they seem to be just laughing about it and selling more stuff.
Yeah. So I say here that, and I didn't have a typo, I say Hillary Clinton is standing by itching to pitch in. And I'm just thinking, there are other words.
Two opportunities for typos.
Exactly. But, you see it in her tweets. Her tweets are so inane. They're these platitude level arguments about how now is the time to stand together and work to stop the coronavirus. Okay, Hillary, you can go back to your Chardonnay vat. You can go do backflips in the Chardonnay swimming pool and just shut the F up. It's...
the more, Charles, I hear from people like Hillary Clinton tweeting crap like that about the coronavirus, the less I trust anything we're being told about the coronavirus, and how these women's organizations can honor Hillary Clinton and ignore people like Juanita Broaddrick and all the other women who've been abused by Bill and Hillary. It's just beyond me. I think she forgot about 1 million of the nurses here. But time's up for somebody. Oh, Corona, is this it? Coronavirus.
That's one of them, yeah.
She's pushing that coronavirus.
Yeah, this to me is an affront. I also knew Ammo Houghton, and this, I doubt that she was a close friend of him. This is a family that owned Corning Glass, and Ammo Houghton actually rescued me when I was a kid out in Martha's Vineyard on a sailboat.
Wow.
He was maybe 15 years older than I am.
I've been to Corning Glass. They wanted to do a 3D video of, because they developed Gorilla Glass, if I'm not mistaken, for iPhones and stuff like that. And they had some pretty elaborate machines for crushing and breaking Gorilla Glass. And they wanted high-speed 3D demonstrations of smashing the Gorilla Glass.
That sounds like that you should pay to do that.
They flew me there on one of their own, it wasn't a jet, but like I had to go to, I forget.
Corning, New York.
No, but I mean, to get the plane, I was like on this corporate turboprop all by myself. It was so strange.
Yeah.
That was a huge waste of money, Charles.
It was fun, I'm sure. So I know we're pressed for time, and I don't know your next.
We're not pressed for time.
We've
got all the time we need for you, Charles.
So why don't we go to the next slide? As our regular viewers know, we're on a mission here that's a different sort of mission. We are not trying to compete with cable TV or network news. We are not in the surface level analysis business. What we try to do with this gigantic scandal, we saw an opportunity back in by June of 2017, to lay down markers that are now out there on multiple platforms, cannot be taken down, where Jason and I marry up his experience visually and in media, born of a Hollywood career, with my experience talking to boards and sophisticated investors about complex matters. What we have been doing is laying these presentations out there twice a week, week after week, month after month, year after year. Eventually, the authorities around the world take notice of this, and we're now many months in fact, years into a process where the authorities do understand that there's a massive problem here. And before them is a very easy choice. Attempt to cover this up and fail and look even stupider, or finally do the right thing, person up, and go back to the very beginning of this thing and explain just how it was possible for the leaders, the regulators, the judicial system, the IRS, in the most powerful country on earth, to absolutely have seen an odoriferous fraud take shape October 23rd, 1997, and then reach the conclusion that it was better to let the corrupt President of the United States and his family continue with this fraud than it was to discipline a then popular person who happened to be impeached, nearly convicted.
He was still popular while he was being impeached.
He's still popular today, but I mean, you could go down and I mean, you name it. I mean, there are people who like to go, dress up in strange clothing, hang upside down, and get beaten with bats, and they get off on that. I mean, we people are pretty fucking stupid, but we saw an opportunity when the other mainstream media just was either conflicted or uninterested or didn't get it. We saw an opportunity to do these presentations, put them out there. They're dated. Millions of people have now watched these presentations. And we weren't trying, we love the fact that millions are watching, and thank you for doing that. But what we were trying to do was just to get to the decent people in the donor countries around the world and in this country who have had it with corrupt politicians who've led us absolutely nowhere, bragging about their successes at our expense, and expose these people for what they are, the fraudsters and grifters that they are. So this is an ongoing process. There is now a large playlist. I guess this is 216. It will probably be 90 minutes or so today. This is our 216th podcast. Just the playlist overview has gotten 37,000 views.
Pretty good.
Which is actually extremely good. And Jason, why don't you explain how you've done this playlist?
Yeah, I've taken all of the episodes of Sunday with Charles, and Charles Ortel is closing in, and I've put them into a playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. This is the home of Crowdsource the Truth. But after several malicious attacks from social engineers who actually have made public statements announcing their intention to end Crowdsource the Truth, to deplatform me, to deplatform this channel, and to put an end to any shows that I'm bringing about, that caused me to create Crowdsource the Truth 2, where people who are watching this live stream that initiated a little bit after 4 o'clock Eastern today are watching us live right now. Later today, people will be able to see us on the Jason Goodman channel, but the playlist resides on the Jason Goodman channel, even though we can't do live streaming from there just yet. See, now, here's another. What is going on here, Charles? It won't properly load the video. I'm trying to show people how they can access the attached presentations for each video, but there's so many things not cooperating today. It's interesting. Okay, there we go. So you might have to hit refresh, but what happens is for each of these videos, there's a description underneath And look at that, 89.9 thousand subscribers, so we're stone's throw away from 90,000. But what people are going to want to do for each video, if you want to access Charles's presentation, you just click on Show More, you navigate past the sponsorship links, and you click on this download the presentation link. It's going to bring you right to the PDF. Each one of them can be downloaded to your own computer where you can follow along during the show. You can print it out. You can hand it out to your friends after the show, give them out in lieu of Christmas gifts, whatever you might choose to do.
Exactly. So it's important too that people ask, what can you do to help beyond financially supporting Jason Goodman's channel, which is an important thing to do. It's incredibly, just like this virus it may or may not be spreading, we can be the good version of a virus. If people like what they see in this presentation, they like the approach that we're taking, they can really help a lot by suggesting to friends and acquaintances, particularly people who are blind to the problems of the Clintons and otherwise concerned about charities and supporting charities, give a copy, send a link via email or however you might communicate with people, a text or whatever, to these people. Encourage them to watch these presentations. And by word of mouth, I'm finding more and more people are watching this, encouraging others to watch it, and thank you for doing it. It's incredibly valuable.
It is, and thanks for mentioning that, Charles. You know, before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to say a couple things about coronavirus, because people have been getting, very concerned from all the things they're hearing on the news. I've done a couple of interviews with people who, some of which are scientists and have areas of expertise beyond my own. Quarite Vera is with us in the comments, frequent viewer with lots of good comments. She's telling us that she's done some research, and in the United States there are presently 1,050 confirmed cases of coronavirus, 29 deaths attributed to it. But in the same time period, there were 4,800 deaths from the flu. So I don't understand. The flu is always around, but restaurants around. I was walking around last night just looking in the windows of restaurants. A lot of popular restaurants virtually empty. It was just announced earlier that the National Association of Broadcasters conference, which I've gone to for 20 plus years, canceled. It's one of the largest annual conventions in Las Vegas, and so much money is spent on these things. Canceled. Small businesses pay to go to these things. They work all year to develop their software, their hardware, go there. This is going to have far-reaching impact, and I just think that this is a manufactured crisis. The pandemic is the news.
Yeah, well, we have some comments on that in the slide, in the presentation itself, with some links. I agree with you. And again, I'm not, I certainly am not giving medical advice. I'm incredibly squeamish, but I like to think that I know a bit about numbers, and I take the point. I mean, the correct way to look at this is to ask the question: if coronavirus can be likened to the flu, as a starting place, each year in America, a country that does have a health system, unlike the World Health Organization, that is a facade. Yeah. I mean, there are not robust health departments in most of the countries around the world, but in the U.S. there is a health system that, in theory, we spend a lot of, in fact, we spend a lot of money on, and in theory it works.
Well, Charles, John Glasgow is telling us that 19 of the 30 deaths were at one nursing home in Washington State. And I want to thank John Glasgow for reminding me about that. I got a message from a Crowdsource The Truth viewer earlier that her own mother is in a nursing home. I don't know where, and I wouldn't say even if I did, but somewhere within the United States. And the nursing home has disallowed visitors. This is this woman's elderly mother who needs constant care, but she visits her every day, and the mother needs the daughter, and the place is not allowing the daughter in there. It sounds like medical kidnapping to me. And who knows what they're doing in that nursing home to these elderly people who, I mean, some of them, I'm sure if you just ignore them for a day, they could be in danger of dying from that.
Yeah, and we have to remember when we think, I'm not saying this is an Antifa exercise, but we have to remember that Antifa and organizations like them are keen to see crises get to the place where they tank the system. I mean, there are people who think that way, and those are diabolical people. And people like that, especially if they're in the medical profession, should be hounded from the medical profession, and worse, they should be put in prison because the way I like to think about the doctors that I had, when I was a kid, I nearly died several times from various things, and I'm very glad I didn't. But the doctors, the care that I got was fantastic, and many doctors are decent human beings. But to see these bubbleheads in the media, on MSNBC and CNN and other broadcast networks, amp this thing up to try to get viewership, to try to sell ads, and betraying their political biases, thinking that this is going to be Trump's Katrina, this virus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really irresponsible.
Is worse than that. And I think that, in some cases, these people on the news are themselves fooled and indoctrinated. And in other cases, I just think they're part of the problem.
I think you could substitute the ED with either nothing or, you said fooled, they're just fool,
Right.
Or fools. Why don't we go into the slides themselves? But if people want to reach out to me, they can do so on my website. Please come follow me and Jason on Twitter. On days that I present, I tend not to tweet as much, but I do enjoy tweeting as a way of reacting to the news and particularly calling out the inanities of people like Hillary and Bill and Chelsea and others. It's a lot of fun. Every day there's a stupid comment out of one of those people.
And Charles, Pam, on the opposite end of stupid comments, Pam Ronning frequently has good comments and is reminding us that they're splashing the CPAC across the news as perhaps having a case that's spread. My personal feeling is they want to have a pretext for saying that Donald Trump and Mike Pence got coronavirus. I mean, I hope this doesn't happen, but I think we know the deep state wants Donald Trump to go.
Exactly.
And, if he gets some disease.
Yeah, horrible. So I have had the great pleasure of being asked to go on Utrice Leeds' show, Progressive Radio Network, and this message is especially out there to the fruithead, Angel Urena. Just to remind you, Angel, Progressive Radio Network is not Russian-controlled. It is not conservative. John Solomon does not run it. It is, in fact, a very left-leaning network. However, I have had the great pleasure to be with Utrice and also Gary Null and others who have given me not only the chance to discuss various frauds, but also what we did yesterday. Utrice likes to, blindside is not exactly the right phrase, but blindside me by having me on and say, would you mind taking some viewer questions? And so caller questions. So I did a bunch of that yesterday as well. And Utrice is a wonderful human being, a gifted journalist, been in this business a long time. She is originally from Trinidad. She does not appreciate Barack Obama at all. She loathes the Clintons for many reasons, but in particular for what they did in Haiti, a country not so far away from her home country of Trinidad. So if you Google me with Utrice Leeds, you should get to, I don't know, probably as many viewers as, the number is very similar to the number of people who go to a Biden rally. It's in the many tens of people.
What would you say the most surprising or controversial viewer question was?
It's very interesting. There was yesterday they're very respectful, and this is a hard left audience. Very good questions about what's going on in the markets. But one guy tried to get me to back down from the comment that I made about Iran, where I said it's a nation run by thugs, and he thought he was going to try to intimidate me a little bit on that. And I said, listen, I'm not afraid to go on Iranian television and talk about and call the leader of the country a thug. So I'm going to double down and triple down, and it is a country run by thugs. So you have to, but it's a very good debate, and there's wonderful people in her audience. And as I say, I commend Utrice Leeds to our own viewers here. She's a real gift, and she's coping with some health problems that are very serious, but she is a wonderful human being, and a treat to be with her. So in breaking news, Israel, I was actually thinking of going to Israel, and I had to delay my plans, But Israel announced that if you want to go to Israel, you better plan on spending an extra 2 weeks there because you're going to be quarantined for 2
Wow.
weeks.
And then where do you stay when you're quarantined? Some
Probably don't stay at a Quality Inn.
terribly unpleasant government thing with
in-
other people who might have coronavirus?
In India, you would probably stay at an inequality inn, but India is now following that lead, and I think it's inevitable. I also got an email from the dean of Harvard Business School explaining why Harvard is now canceling all in-person classes.
What?
Yeah, and
I saw that email that you got, but I didn't read through to that portion of it.
And so when we're now in a place, you're sitting here, it's March, right? And the academic year in the United States ends May-June timeframe. You got spring break. If it hasn't started already, it starts probably Friday for many people. And you're sitting there at an institution like Harvard or these expensive ones that charges students for room and board, $70,000, $75,000 a year. Now you've got an excuse to, not have any in-person classes. Who knows how long this set of conditions is going to continue. These campuses, or as Rush Limbaugh likes to call them, campi, are places where very rich people send their children who have lots of spending money. And if all of a sudden these people are on the one hand not going to be in class, and so therefore hurting the local economies, but also are going to be available to get dragooned into campaigning for Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or even Donald Trump. I think we're going down a path here where we're rushing down a path here, careening down a path here that doesn't make the most sense to me. And as this fellow, Drew Pinsky, the second, I think he's a doctor.
Drew.
Yeah, I mean, he's saying that the panic created by the coronavirus media commentary is a lot worse than the coronavirus itself. And I really agree with that. I think that, it used to be that we relied foolishly on people like Walter Cronkite in the old days. You had the 6:30 news. You'd sit there, and I remember in college sitting there listening to him and thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's reasonable. But now we have these pinheads who whip themselves up into another frenzy, and you can have people doing some extremely irresponsible things here.
Yeah.
So as I understand it from people like Pinsky and others, the people who are at risk, and it makes sense to me from a number standpoint, the people who are at risk are the people who are on the older end of things, so 75 and up, who also have other conditions.
Well, and they're also at risk from the flu, but no one's going crazy about that.
Right, I know. But so anyway, I think the commentaries, like the other commentary that we've seen from 2016 forward, is really horrible. The next thing is, we have this, here's a couple zero hedge pieces. The first one says, holy smokes, the number of cases are a lot, they're doubling all of a sudden. But as you say, it's still down at a very low number as against a population of 325 million people.
But also, who's giving us this information?
Yeah.
This is coming from, if it's coming from an unreliable source, I just don't trust any of this. How, somebody put out a story yesterday that, what's his name? Harry Potter had coronavirus. And I'm just thinking, if it's all over everywhere, why has there not been any person of notoriety who's been diagnosed? Why hasn't there been somebody who's come out and said, ooh, I was patient number whatever, and I went to the hospital, and they did X, Y, and Z. It's just like the news is spitting out this information, and everybody's freaking out.
Yeah.
No toilet paper, no cleaning products, no tissues at the supermarket downstairs. And that was at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's not good, as Trump says. So
maybe people will die from not being able to wipe. Have we thought about that?
But I also think the spectacle of having National Guard people show up in New Rochelle, because apparently the lawyer who caught it, and that lawyer was officing at 60 Grand Central, 60 East 42nd Street, right opposite Grand Central. and was commuting by Metro North up to New Rochelle.
Right.
So clearly there's an issue in New Rochelle.
And then now they also have coronavirus.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But then this idea, there's the Zero Hedge story that actually people are betting that Hillary, this one here, no.
All right, it's the first one.
No, yeah. No.
Got it.
They're betting that Hillary, this is this thing predicted as Bernie's odds are underneath Hillary's. I mean,
Wow.
and look at Joe, he's up at 90%. Well, Joe was down here at 20%. He got as low in around Valentine's Day. He was like 15%, and now suddenly Joe is the invincible schmo. I mean,
The whole thing is fake. I mean, I don't believe this. I don't believe the coronavirus information. I don't believe any of this.
Yeah. So, in other news, quickly, Weinstein, at the same time that people are talking up Hillary Clinton as a viable presidential candidate, I mean, what Juanita Broderick endured, having been raped twice in under an hour by Bill Clinton, according to her, and then there's no nice way to rape somebody, but doing it in a way where Bill, according to Juanita, bit through Juanita's upper lip to force her into submission, and then on the way finally out the door after he was done with her, said, "You better put some ice on it." That is far worse, if true, than these crimes for which Harvey Weinstein has been now sentenced to 23 years in prison.
Yeah.
And Harvey Weinstein was he was a very substantial contributor to Hillary Clinton's campaigns. He vacationed with the Clintons. He used his power in Hollywood to orchestrate fundraisers for the Clintons and their allies. And I mean, the idea that you would attempt that you would do the Hulu documentary last week, which they did, the 4-part series of Hillary, called Hillary, and allow Bill Clinton, who used to have a brain in his head, to actually bring back up the issue of Monica Lewinsky and say...
When was that there was a brain in Bill Clinton's head? I'm not aware of that.
He got the Rhodes Scholarship, he went to Yale Law School, and I mean, you can't say that he has no moral compass. He's made a series of extremely bad decisions. He's engaged, has been leading the largest unprosecuted set of frauds and political corruption exercises in history, but you can't say that he's intellectually stupid. I mean, he is demonstrably able to...
He said some pretty stupid things in my presence.
No, I'm sure he has, but in other presences, at other times, he's given eloquent speeches and made great points and whatever.
I think he's a slick talker, but this guy's an idiot in my book.
Yeah, all right. So, but back on Juanita, I believe Juanita and her allegations.
Yeah.
And I certainly will say that the mainstream media was disgusting in the way in which they treated Juanita Broderick back when she was making the allegations, and has hardly covered itself in glory ever since. But now we have Weinstein in prison for 23 years, and Weinstein is not going to do well in prison.
I don't think he's going to make it.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a guy who I think would kill himself. Although maybe not. He's such a narcissist, right? It's hard to say.
I just think, I mean, he is one of these miserable human beings who has gotten away with being miserable to many other people and gotten away with it for so long. I don't think he even believes that he's...
Charles, something very strange just happened. The broadcast just terminated.
Wow.
And
is it back now?
it's not, but my plan to restore it is that you and I will continue it right now, and then I'll re-upload the whole thing in its entirety afterwards. I don't know what's going on today, Charles.
This does not seem like normal.
Because I would have to accidentally push all the way over here. My fingers are over here.
No, you didn't.
Throughout.
So I think somebody's interfering. But so back on Weinstein and Rajat Gupta, what I was starting to say to you and the viewers is that Rajat admitted that he got sent into solitary confinement because when a guard showed up to check his room, he wasn't standing at attention the way he was supposed to be standing at attention sufficient so that the guard could just check whatever it was he had to check. And Rajat Gupta, I would guess, probably went into prison thinking that he better be very careful, whereas Harvey Weinstein thinks that he's a Hollywood mogul and he's going to hang on to his wealth and he'll beat this eventually, and there's just been a terrible series of mistakes and he could buy anybody off and threaten the people he can't buy off. I think the guy is going to get the crap kicked out of him.
I don't think he's going to live.
Yeah, I don't think he'll kill himself, but I wouldn't shock me.
But somebody else might.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and certainly they don't want him talking about stuff, right?
Right, and then we have this Hunter Biden. Now, Hunter Biden is so over the top. Now what he's saying, he's got his new wife is pregnant, his girlfriend, when he was cheating on with somebody else.
Hang on a second.
That's Joe and his father.
But let's talk about this for a second.
That's weird.
That's a very weird photo.
It is. It is. It's very strange. Yeah, anyway.
Coronavirus threat should allow him to avoid paternity deposition until after the election.
This is the approach here. These Bidens, they think like the Clintons and maybe the Obamas and the Bushes. We've served you, the Americans. We've earned our place in the sun. These petty annoyances that others have to deal with, we shouldn't have to deal with them. And no, I'm not going to show up, and as a judge has instructed me in Arkansas, to explain exactly how much money I made, so that this person who has now borne me a child can have a fair view into what she and his child should receive until the child becomes of legal age. Is this guy, the father, for letting him, the father, on so many levels, should not be running for president, but for allowing this kind of crap to happen, it just tells you, imagine what will happen should Joe Biden, God forbid, end up on January 20th, 2021, and afterwards living for a short time in the White House with perhaps Hillary Clinton as the vice president for like 16 seconds.
Now, Charles, obviously, I've never been a father. I don't have any kids or anything like that, but my feeling is, if you had an adult son, Hunter Biden is about my age, as unfortunate as an unplanned pregnancy can be for everybody involved, I really do think at a certain point you sit this problem child down and tell him, listen, Hunter, you got to do the right thing.
No, you say, listen, fat.
Listen, fat. Send a check to this stripper and let's move on.
Yeah.
But seriously, irrespective of how this came about, this woman's got his kid.
Grandkid.
I'm talking about this guy.
I know, I'm saying Joe Biden's grandkid.
Terrible.
This is the kind of stuff, if you wanted, what do they call it? Obama was referred to as no drama Obama. This is all drama O'Biden, nonstop. There's nothing but drama.
What are you hiding, Biden?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So, and then we turn back to our favorite friend Hillary Clinton, and this she is now trying to sell the following theory, that Facebook is enthralled to conservatives.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the ticket. You remember that guy? What's his name?
John Lovitz.
Yeah, that's the ticket. Facebook, yeah.
I think Hillary Clinton is fully aware that there is a huge contingent of people who will believe anything that's said.
Yeah, but we go back to it, and that we talked about it before, that Molly Hemingway had a piece, several pieces I think now, making the big point that if Michael Bloomberg, for his almost $600 million, could not win much more than American Samoa, how in the hell did the Russians, by spending $200,000 on Facebook ads, influence the 2016 election? It's nonsensical, right?
Yeah.
It's just complete bullshit. And again, for somebody like Hillary Clinton, who, you're right, she will open her mouth and a large percentage of the world population will say, well, she wouldn't say that unless she done something to back it up, so maybe it's right.
Yeah.
You're going to get that group. And now we have this idea, CNN is saying that for this debate, there's not going to be any in-person audience at the debate between Bernie and Joe, which, I mean, probably they could just have a Biden rally right before it, and then they wouldn't really have to clean out the auditorium that much.
Right.
They could just, but
that's a good point, Charles. What keeps people away from a political rally more effectively, Joe Biden or the coronavirus?
Exactly. But the two of them, this is the best they've got. You know, Tulsi, of course, has been kept out of it unfairly, but this is the two old white men, one a nincompoop, the other a communist.
Can he see?
I
look
don't
at
know.
his eyes.
I don't know.
Something really wrong with Joe Biden.
Yeah, and the way in which he argues is just so pugilistic. It's
You're full of shit.
Exactly. I mean, you want to be president of the United States? Listen, fat, give me push-ups. You know, you're out of shape.
People.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have an AR-14.
14, I like that. You should ban all the AR-14s.
Yeah, we'll give you that one, Joe. You can ban them because there are none of them. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a 15. Oh, I meant 15. You're
Well,
equivalent.
it's just one more, right? He's like the Spinal Tap of assault weapons. We're going to get an AR-16
Right.
and really do it.
And you look, I mean, maybe this is a picture that is just, you know, they both had found out that they're going to have to fly commercial home. But, I mean, these are two people who don't look very joyous. You know, these are
Campaign sponsored by X-Lax.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just, ugh.
Or Fleet. Either would be good sponsors for these guys.
That's right, or Viralax or whatever that thing, yeah. So, we have a drama going on now, Jason, which is this whole FISA renewal it has to be renewed. The next one, has to be renewed.
Just the news.
Yeah, this is John Solomon's thing.
Yep.
And the FISA thing has to be renewed by this weekend, or it goes into abeyance. And the House version, apparently, of the renewal doesn't go far enough. But this is a fantastic story by John, just out. Look at that, March 11th, 3:25 p.m. It's quite well researched, and basically what it says is that Comey and Rosenstein and others were saying, you know, we went by the book to get these warrants. If we made a mistake, it was a process error. We did not lie to the court. All of this was done by the book. I remember Rosenstein saying that multiple times. I remember Comey saying that. I believe Ray has also been saying it. Here's the judge in D.C. saying, no. The original FISA warrants were secured, it doesn't say it this way, but lying to the FISA court, going all the way back to January of 2017 and maybe before that. So I hope that Donald Trump, I don't know what is taking so long, but I hope that Donald Trump soon will make the decision to go to the Tecovas cowboy boot store and get, you know, some size 18 steel-tipped cowboy boots and an arsenal of weaponry and land on this corrupt cabal. I mean, we've had it. This is now the 216th broadcast, almost 2 hours each, going through this since June of 2017. No allegation made in any broadcast has been contested, has even been debated. Yeah. We have received no letter from anybody saying cease and desist. We've received not a single complaint from anybody.
Well, we got a crappy tweet from Angel Urena.
Yeah.
I don't know if that counts.
It doesn't count. So it's really time for Trump to do something about this. So then we have this issue. I just want to push up the second to the next one. Yeah. So here's Barron's. Now Barron's, I have some experience with. There's some fine writers over at Barron's, but it's a legacy, print-based, declining publication, and they're finally getting the point here that GE is which is closed today below $8.50 a share. I think at $8.20 or thereabouts. We have. Wait a minute, though, but look at this headline. They cannot resist an opportunity, no matter what it is. It's like, oh, that coronavirus is even worse now because of this. But there's a kind of a working rule of thumb that all bankrupt companies trade at $2 a share. the bigger ones. And so when you start heading, this is a company that at its peak traded at $60 a share. When I first, in 2007, made an issue of this thing, it was at $40 a share, and it hasn't split. Back in 2007, in August of 2007, the Dow was way under where it is even now. So here you have GE plummeting in value as the stock market is in contagion. The closest correlation for General Electric stock price historically has been with the oil price. And that's in part because GE sells items, services, and goods that in a rising oil price environment, it makes sense to buy the GE equipment. But when prices are low, declining or low, there's no point in spending capital money to change, to get more fuel economy out of a car, a truck, a plane, a ship, or whatever, if energy prices are very depressed.
Oh yeah, there's been a big development of jet engines at GE that are much more fuel efficient, and it also screws up their business that nobody is flying anywhere because they're afraid of coronavirus.
Right, and we said this in a prior broadcast, for people who are numerate and enjoy this kind of stuff, go take a look at the General Electric annual report, which is called a 10K, and you can find it on the SEC Edgar site. And it's dry reading, but it's really painful. I mean, you have a team here. The CEO is somebody brought in September 30th, 2018 to replace the preceding guy who replaced Immelt. He comes in connected to the fund that bought a whole bunch of stock in GE at, I think, in the 20s per share. He had been a fund director in GE on the inside, and now he's dealing with, I mean, much worse than coronavirus in the sense that GE's top-line revenues for its businesses, many of them once were world leaders, are declining. Its profit margins are eroding, measured on a cash basis. That's Jeff Immelt, who is a disaster at GE. And it has today too much debt. It has a shrinking equity base. It has questionable intangible assets. So everything I warned about in 2007, it has back again. And now we're in a period of great volatility in the markets. We don't have the ability for a sustained period of time in this country anyway, to make interest rates go negative to try to help a company like this. Nor should we. I mean, GE was saved, I think, by sleight of hand, both by Warren Buffett putting some money in, and then with the FDIC opening an opportunity for GE's capital business to borrow on a basis they shouldn't have been allowed to borrow. So once again, GE's back in the doghouse. I wrote a column last year about this, warning again that this was coming when GE stock was around $20 a share.
It seems to me, Charles, that it's very, very close to the low. I mean, since I've been looking at it when you told me about it, that's pretty darn close to the lowest it's gone. But it seems like when it gets down to like 8.1, something happens to bring it up. Is it some of this artificial buoying that you're talking about because they don't want it to go to 6 because that would just be...
Yeah, I think what's happening, I mean, when I look at something like this, I'm not a chartist. I mean, I look at the substantive picture that is in the GE books, and I puke. I mean, it's just, there's nothing good
just
there.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'd rather have coronavirus than buy the stock. And when you see something like this, the pace of decline accelerated late in the day. It looks like before the close, somebody tried to stop the carnage, but was unsuccessful. And it closed on the low. So when you look at this, there are people who, I mean, GE, you have to understand, is a stock that was among the most widely owned stocks of any stock in the world. So when I, in 2007, in August, wrote the memo that I did and started pounding the table, people really did, relatives of mine, I mean, just from close friends, said, Charles, have you lost your freaking mind? You're attacking General Electric? I mean, there's no way that it can be as bad as you say. But I'm stubborn, so I kept at it. And I'm telling you, the people I think have really been punished at General Electric are the pensioners. The people who, and Jeff Immelt's father was a pensioner of GE, had worked at GE. Rather than go and do the right thing for pensioners and put enough money in the assets of the pension plan to cover off the pension deficit,
steal it.
They didn't steal it, but they said, we don't need to do that. We know that over time the GE stock price is going to go up and the returns are going to cover off the deficit. So we're not going to put that money in to protect our pensioners. Instead, what we'll do is we'll pay ourselves a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, that's stealing it, isn't it?
It's not stealing it, but it's just no, it's on stealing would be literally going in and removing. But they get consultants to go and I love the arguments that they would use. They say, well, there are very few companies as complex as GE. So we obviously have a limited number of people we can compare Jeff Immelt to. Let's get a whole bunch of highly paid people and say, well, we can't afford to lose Jeff Immelt. We better make sure that we pay him $25 million a year and let him fly around the world and live like
2 jets,
live like the Clintons. So that to me is a case we can't sweep this mess under the rug. I know Jack Welch has recently died. My own view on Welch is that he wasn't as great a manager as everybody said, including Donald Trump recently. I think he, for a time, was a good manager, but I think 1995 to the end of his tenure, he got off on the wrong foot. He let GE Capital go haywire, and he, one of the marks that you judge a legendary CEO on is his successor. Did he pick a good successor? Jeff Immelt, I mean, I remember when I first focused on it, you're not going to believe this, but the sophisticated financial analysts who were watching GE, none of them had the training, it seemed, to look at the finance piece. Everybody who was watching GE was watching the jet engines, the industrial part, listening to unit head and sector head and whatever get up there and say, we've got this backlog and this new widget and this new project, aren't we fantastic? Here's a dinner we'll take you to. You're in the elite group of analysts, we'll get a preview. You can have a one-on-one meeting with Jeff. And it got to the point where the GE quarterly press release had so many times using the word great that they jokingly talked about the greatometer, and they would listen, and they would look at the press release, and they would count the number of greats.
And that would tell them how well.
Yeah, and if the number of greats was going down, that's really bad news.
That's trouble.
And people actually wrote research reports about this. I'll never forget in denouement, going back a little bit, in early 2008 for the Super Bowl ad. GE used to spend a lot of money on Super Bowl ads because they owned NBC and they did whatever.
Superb Owl.
Right, so I'm sitting there watching the Superb Owl, and I see these Wizard of Oz characters, and I see them start talking about if I only had a brain. And that was the GE ad, and the tagline was, if I only had a brain. They're trying to say we have this great electronic brain. And then their tagline was imagination at work. And what I did with the Clintons, my tagline for this is false philanthropy.
Yeah.
For GE, it was simple. It was too much imagination at work was what we used. And that's the case. I mean, it's a lesson. Once we get done with the Clinton Foundation, God forbid, we got to get back into explaining how GE went so badly wrong to encourage managers to do the right thing.
But you've only mentioned 2 of the 3 characteristics of a great CEO. You forgot to address how important it is to gauge how much the CEO looks like the evil Mr. Clean.
Exactly.
Because this guy's leading the pack on that.
Right. He's leading the pack on nightmares.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good look.
Not good. Anyway. So then, to end on a positive note, did you hear about what happened to Prince Harry?
Oh. That he married Meghan Markle and left the royal family?
But there are these Russian pranksters. People give the Russians a hard time, and I don't like it when the Russian Air Force goes into our airspace and messes around with our planes. But you got to say one thing, they got some awesome pranksters.
Is this the same guys who called
Schiff?
Adam Schiff?
I'm not sure if it is, but they got Prince Harry, who's they posed as Greta Thunberg and her father. I didn't know that, to get Prince Harry to talk about his wife. Oh, this is hilarious.
So he calls these guys are doing amazing work. It's very difficult to get phone numbers for people like this. So I'm not sure how they're doing that, but
it's hilarious.
That is quite good.
I mean, I didn't, Russian pranksters get, it wouldn't be hard to do this, Maxine Waters, and I think they definitely got Schiff.
Yeah. I mean, these guys, I guess, if it's the same guys, it's sort of like the Howard Stern version,
Right.
like the Russian Howard Stern.
Right, so this is going to be painless. I know there's a lot of numbers on this page, but I thought that it would be useful to look at the results that appear in Google. I didn't put the links because I didn't have enough room on this particular page, but you just go Google up Missouri 2020 primary results, Michigan 2020 primary, and you get some of these numbers. So what I did here is let's start on Missouri. I took, for the Democrats, the top 3 votes. Here you see Biden at 400,000, Sanders at 230, Mini Mike at less than 10, and a total of 638,000, right? In contrast, you look at the Missouri is a state that actually leans Republican. Trump only got 300,000 votes, but his challengers got nothing at spit. Weld and Kate. Sorry, do I have that correct? May have. This should say 2016.
Ah.
Did I get this right? No, I just put the wrong name. It shouldn't be Kasich, I'm sorry. But this is the 2020 result here for Republicans. And you look at that and you say, wait a minute, in a Republican state, maybe Trump is in trouble here, right? Because if Biden got 400,000 votes and Trump only got 300,000 in the Republican rally, maybe there's not that much enthusiasm for Trump in a Republican state. And I don't buy that argument at all. I think it's more the case that now, we sit here in March. It certainly looks to me as if Trump will be the Republican nominee. And so why would I get in my car and go to my polling place as a Republican to register a vote when people are concerned about coronavirus or whatever? I could see a reason why people wouldn't come out. But if you then go back and look, there's, I think, worse news for the Democrats. You go back and look at 2016. In 2016, in Missouri, Clinton got 312,000 votes. Sanders got 311,000 votes. This time around, he only gets 230,000 votes in Missouri.
Right, so people are basically tired of Bernie Sanders.
I think Missouri, and I know you don't like it. I like Colonel Sanders. Yeah. Kentucky Fried Chicken, but I don't think people in Missouri are much into socialist, communist Bernie Sanders. So that's very bad news. But then
maybe most of those votes came from people who thought it was Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, we'll get some free Colonel Sanders. So
find out that secret recipe once and for all.
Yeah, exactly, which is bad soup. But you go back into 2016 and you look at this, you say, this is pretty interesting. In 2016, Trump gets 383,000, Cruz 382, Kasich 95. The top 3 get 860,000 votes. But look at this general. In the general election, Trump gets 1.6 million votes in the general. Now think about that. I don't know how much you vote in primaries.
Nah.
I don't.
No.
So people making a big deal about what happened here is this is bad news for Trump, I think are smoking the wrong kind of hemp. They're smoking whatever,
I think the hemp you make ropes out of.
Exactly.
The flowers that people are smoking.
And because you look at this margin in Missouri, they pronounce it out there, I think, Missouri. But in 2016, Trump got 1.6 million votes in the end, and Hillary only got 1.1 million. That's a crushing defeat. So then, in contrast, let's look at Michigan for a second. That's also interesting if we go back to the top. So here, somehow, Bite Me manages to get 838,000 votes in Michigan. Sanders gets 576,000. Bloomberg, for all his $600 million spent, gets 73,000 votes. I mean, I suppose. I personally would have liked to.
Value.
I would have kept the 600 million myself, but that's not my call. Anyway, so the top 3 get 1.5 million votes. Trump, you look at this and you say, oh, Trump's in trouble. He only got 639,000 votes in Michigan. Of course, his challengers got spit. Then we look at going back in 2016. What happened in the Clinton-Sanders thing? Clinton got 582,000. Sanders wins with 600,000. And again, in 2020, Sanders gets fewer votes in Michigan. than he got in 2016. That, to me, I mean, if you're sitting there trying to raise money, if it felt to me as a finance dude to try to sign up to raise money for Bernie Sanders, I would instead check myself into Bellevue. I mean, there's no way.
I don't understand how people still support Bernie Sanders, because I sort of, it's like opening the door and seeing the girlfriend with another guy. Now you know what's up. When Sanders was on stage with Hillary Clinton endorsing her after what they did to him.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. So then we go back again when we look in the Republican primaries. Then it was early around this time. Trump was winning and constantly, but it wasn't decided in March.
He wasn't yet tired of winning.
He wasn't tired of winning. He only gets 484,000 votes in 2016. Now running effectively unopposed, he gets 639,000. So there's something different in Michigan from Missouri. Interesting to me that the Missouri voters are just like, we're not going to come out. Whereas the Michigan people say, no, we're going to make a statement. Now, maybe that's because Michigan was so close in 2016. You look at that, Trump got, in the end, in the primary, he gets only 484,000 votes. In the end, he gets 2.3 million votes in Michigan, beating Hillary Clinton, who didn't bother to campaign. So this, I think, is a lot more complicated than the bobblehead surface level people will tell you. I don't think it spells good news at all for Biden, because I look at that and say, how many of the Sanders voters in Michigan are in 2020 November going to turn out for Joe Biden? I would be shocked if it's half.
Yeah, I don't think you go from Bernie Sanders to Joe Biden, because the argument for Bernie Sanders to Trump in 2016 made sense in the context that they're sort of both outside the mainstream. But you're not going from Bernie Sanders to Joe Biden.
I don't think so. And I don't think, I know that Michigan is a state where there are both government unions and private sector unions, and I would bet they can turn out a lot of voters to these primaries. But when you think about, being enthusiastically behind Joe Biden by November, I think people are going to be real tired of riding with Biden well before November 2020.
Well played, Charles.
What?
Riding with Biden, well played.
Thanks. So now on to some other Clinton-related news. There's an excellent article I've excerpted in part, and I provide a link here by, I don't know, Lucien, I guess, is probably a man's name, but I don't know.
It's a French guy.
It's a lawyer, an American lawyer, writing about the importance of a public charity like the Clinton Foundation having an independent governing board. And it says here that this is 26th of February 2010, this thing is published. It says the IRS then is looking at how independent governing boards are. Now, what we know what was really going on is that crooked Eric Holder, as Attorney General, and crooked Lois Lerner, and other people inside the IRS and Justice Department were using the opportunity to scrutinize public charities as a way to terrorize right-leaning, conservative, pro-Constitution charities and donors to them. So this is an article that comes out 26 February saying the IRS is on this, and they think it's really important to have an independent board to guard against abuse. You see that?
Can I share something with you quickly about Eric Holder?
Sure.
Maybe I've mentioned this before, but it's very interesting that when you now Google Eric Holder, you get an amazing array of information and images of this guy who killed Nipsey Hussle, who is also Eric Holder.
I thought that was the Attorney General.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it could be just a coincidence, but this guy did one thing that anybody ever heard of, and he's all over the Google here, whereas the real Eric Holder seems to be sort of suppressed by some of this information. But enough of that.
Yeah, Eric Holder is, in my mind, a shameless con artist.
And worse than that.
Yeah, and so they write this this is an independent law firm correctly saying that if you want to guard against abuse, you should have an independent board, not for a public charity. Let's think, of all the people in the world we can concentrate power in a public charity that's supposed to be operating in Little Rock, let's just make the people in charge of that Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton for their lives. That's the opposite of independent.
Is this for a public charity that's taking in billions, or any public charity?
Any public. So the whole idea of a public charity is you stand in the shoes of government, right? You're giving people, individuals, enormous opportunity to do good. You're saying to them, you can go ask for revenues, you can then spend your expenses directed towards the public purpose, and any difference, if you have a notional profit, you don't have to pay taxes on that, and you can reinvest that money in support of your charity, not pay any taxes on the interest, the dividend. This is an enormous power you're giving to people, and you don't do that so that you can have a penthouse with hot and cold running interns and catering services in your 2 restaurants, and use it as a scam machine to support various candidates around the country and around the world to enrich yourselves, your family, and these other crooks around. That's not what you're supposed to do in a public charity.
So what exactly does it mean, independent governing board?
Well, we're going to get to that in the next page. We have a definition of that. But this is a memo that went out on the 26th of February to clients of this firm, Reinhardt Law, saying every tax-exempt entity should, at this time, go out and make sure that they're going to comply with these new, tougher rules about having an independent board. So what does the Clinton Foundation do? Precisely at this time.
The opposite.
All right. Oh, of course, the opposite. So here we have 6 different, there are others that we could put in, just to take a few seconds on this. William J. Clinton Foundation, the first one, is the parent company, never amended its articles of incorporation, did not adopt bylaws, engaged in all kinds of related party transactions that are not disclosed, feathered the nests of the Clinton family. It was incorporated, as we've explained before, on the 23rd of October, and it had extensive what are called pre-formation activities prior to that date that they did not disclose to the crooked IRS, led by Clinton cronies at that time. So, instead of filling the form out properly for the main Clinton Foundation, which was then called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, they didn't disclose the pre-formation activities. They didn't organize it lawfully, i.e. having an organizational meeting, get independent people. They had Skip Rutherford, who was a political hack and doofus. They had David Pryor, who was a senator and governor in Arkansas, chairman of the Democratic Party ultimately. He also was running the second Clinton Presidential Trust. Then you had Vernon Jordan's wife, who was co-chair of the second Clinton Inauguration Committee. I mean, these are consummate insiders, enthralled to the Clintons, enthralled to the Democratic Party, the precise opposite of the type of person you'd want as a trustee of an supposed independent public charity. And they never did any of the paperwork right, so they organized it, I say, illegally. And what does the IRS do back in 1998? They say, you know what? Hillary was talking on the 27th on CBS or ABC saying, the right wing there's a vast right-wing conspiracy and she's right and we're going to throw her a bone. We'll just give her a public charity. And so that's what they did. Clinton Global Initiative, scroll forward 12 years later, same thing. They incorporate it. They don't hold an organizational meeting. They have extensive activities dating into 2004. They don't disclose to the IRS. Under Barack Obama, the IRS says, of course, Barack speaks at the Clinton Global Initiative in New York in 2009 before it's registered there lawfully, and then speaks again every year while Hillary's Secretary of State. The IRS says, oh yeah, for the Clintons, they're allowed to break the rules. The rules don't matter to them. We'll give them an expedited. Then Clinton Health Access Initiative, that's incorporated in September of 2009. Again, extensive admitted activities and press releases dating back to 2002, some would say 2001, not disclosed in the application, not organized lawfully. 15th of March 2010, just as this memo is being published, hey, we'll give you another bone. Then the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund, they start raising money for that on January 14th. They don't set up an entity until January 28th. They don't disclose bills pre this earthquake involvement in Haiti dating back to 2002. They organized the damn thing illegally, and another bone. April 28th, they get the bone. Why do they get it then? Because Barack Obama has sent to Arkansas a couple $100,000 out of his Nobel Peace Prize winnings, which were so richly won. To
the state of Arkansas, he sent money?
Yeah, they sent the check to the Clinton Foundation address in Arkansas for something that didn't exist. And that money was sent before the thing got IRS approval. So then on February 22nd, Alliance for a Healthier Generation, again, pre-formation activities dating back to 2005, not disclosed, not organized lawfully. IRS says, you know what? It's a Clinton thing we'll give you. Of course, it's a Clinton thing. We'll give you a determination letter, no problem. Then C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, that's Little Mike's thing. He's chairman of it by 22nd November 2010. Extensive pre-formation activities going back to 2005 in this country, going back in, I think, Australia to 2002 or 3. Illegally organized, and they get the bone 24 November 2013 of being tax exempt. There's 6 examples that fly in the face of regulation, law, and custom when it comes to public charity. So what's taking so long?
I don't know, Charles.
So if we go to the next page, we answer your question about independence. It says various relationships. This is again lifted from that memo. It says here that you're not compensated is one suggestion that you're independent. Now let's talk about that for a second. If you're a real sneak and a thief, what you do is you say, I don't want a salary because a salary is something I have to pay taxes on. Instead, I want you to reimburse my expenses. And let's just say my expenses are going to be $1 million a year. And you say, wait a minute, how could you have $1 million worth of expenses? It's like, well, hookers, we got flying, we got mistresses, we got this and that. I can't declare it. I can't declare any of that crap. I get in big trouble. So if you can get an organization to agree to just wire you money every month that you claim is reimbursement of expenses, you shouldn't do this. It's grossly illegal to do it. But you're flouting the law. Now the IRS is smarter than that. They say, well, we want you to declare to us not merely any compensation, but whether you have had reimbursements of any type, any payments of any type of $10,000 or more from each of these organizations. Now, Chelsea Clinton and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have flown all over the place on fancy private jets in connection with Clinton Foundation work. How was that paid for? Right? No, if the jet was donated, then
in kind.
That should have been disclosed in the Clinton Foundation tax returns. None of that has ever been disclosed. If they paid for it, then and if Chelsea derived the benefit, there's no argument that Chelsea Clinton should be flying on a private jet. The children of former presidents are not protected by Secret Service.
Really?
You can't make this argument that she deserves to have that kind of
Why
security.
is Hillary if Chelsea isn't?
Hillary was the Secretary of State and the First Lady, but Chelsea is just a kid, so that they don't get the same level of protection. I know that from the son of a former president who shall remain nameless.
Huh.
So they don't disclose that properly, and then they of course don't disclose any of the related party transactions. For example, the idea that while Hillary was Secretary of State, Bill Clinton and Hillary could have derived $17.6 million in payments from Laureate Education for Bill's part-time work as the chancellor of a for-profit institution. That needs to have been disclosed in every single 990. Yeah.
Whoop. Ad blocker. Yeah. Everybody's got to make their money, Charles. But it was an article from the Daily Mail about Chelsea Clinton taking her private jet there.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. We have to look at this, Charles. You see how she's taking it 330 miles.
There it is again.
Charles, I'm telling you, there's something to that.
Yeah. So, and look, it's fun to go on private jets. It's fun to be rich enough that you might have your own private jet. But, a charity is not supposed to be a lifestyle supporting exercise. It's supposed to be every penny that is donated to a charity comes, in theory, from people who care about the money and could give it to other charities or do other things with it. You're supposed to really mind the store carefully and make sure that the money is spent primarily towards the exempt purposes that are authorized. And this thing, when you look at it, there is no question that this has been run as a way to cover off the misdeeds of the Clinton family and ultimately to support campaigns for Hillary, lifestyle for Bill and Hillary and Chelsea. There's no question about any of that being true. There's no question that the audits that, in theory, went in for the Clinton Foundation are boldly false and materially misleading. The only question is, what in the hell is taking so long with the IRS looking not simply at the Clinton Foundation, but at every piece of this entity? I said on Utrice Lead, you hear Mike Pence and others in the Democrat Party talk about the federal government having a whole of government approach to anything. And I said on Utrice yesterday, I said,
What kind of hole?
no, I said the approach that we took in the very, you and I and others that are bird dogging this thing, is we're taking a whole of conspiracy approach. We're looking at every element of this conspiracy, from the big dog, Bill Clinton and Hillary and Chelsea, the pup, down to Ira Magaziner, Doug Band, John Hope Bryant, anybody who has anything to do with this charity, supposed fake charity, we're going after. We've been going after them for years. And eventually we're going to get them.
Some pretty awesome memes being made of Chelsea Clinton's use of a private jet. You know, Charles, I am all for capitalism, entrepreneurship, making a ton of money so you can get on a private jet, but that's dramatically different than charity work, and I don't even understand how somebody who is helping other people could be embarrassed by appearing on a private jet when they're going to hang out with people who don't have water.
Right, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So the final slide, next page, yeah. We had talked in the past about this guy Taylor Branch, who's a personal friend of Bill Clinton. As young kids, they were involved in politics. He writes a book published in 2009, The Secret Tapes. And he mentioned, this is an excerpt from his book, the suggestion that the Clinton administration tape White House meetings was rejected by Bob Barnett in a report dated 6 July 1993.
Why have we heard about that guy before?
I'll tell you in a second. So he's a Washington lawyer. It says here, who specializes in media relations.
Oh, right, the book lawyer.
Yeah, Barnett was looking ahead to represent both Clintons on book contracts. This is in July 6, 1993. Mm-hmm. So he's smart enough to say Clinton eventually will be an ex-president. People want to read a book about him. We'll be able to sell the rights to a Clinton book for a lot of money. And they had to know. The folks at Williams and Connolly, where Bob Barnett worked, had to know that actually the more scandalous the Clinton story became, the more interesting the book will be. And so the notion that you would lend money as a law firm to a client, I mean, Clinton didn't have two nickels to rub together.
That's the opposite of what lawyers do.
I know, but they generally do not do. They should be barred from doing it, frankly. There is a system that if you have an indigent client, you can get representation. But certainly the President of the United States should not be engaging a firm like Williams and Connolly without paying them for 8 years. I mean, you think of the juice that Williams and Connolly got under the Clinton administration and afterwards. And here you explicitly have somebody, it's a Pulitzer Prize-winning guy, Taylor Branch, saying in this book that got published in 2009, Barnett was looking ahead past 6th of July 1993 so he could get book deals, he get paid to do book deals for Hillary and Bill. And that these meetings continued into August 1993, where colleagues from Williams and Connolly met at the White House to think about this, right? Now, what happened on the 20th of July, 1993? Vince Foster's body was found.
July 1993.
Right, 20th of July, 1993.
Oh, yeah.
And there are allegations, if we hit this report here, there are allegations that certain very senior people were trying to make sure that documents that had been in the possession of Vince Foster did not end up in investigators' hands. And one of those people...
Ooh, where did you get this?
Online.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is something for people
One of
to
those
read.
people was who? Cheryl
Hillary
Mills.
Clinton.
Well, and Cheryl Mills was
Yeah, it's
cleaning
all
out
here,
the
yeah.
office.
It's a long, long thing. People can read it for themselves.
When did this come out?
I just got it by Googling.
Wow. Wow.
So if we go back into the slide here and then close with this description of Bob Barnett taken from Williams and Connolly's website. He's one of the premier authors representatives in the world. Clients, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, W. Bush, Hillary, Michelle, Laura, Mitch McConnell, Jake Tapper, Secretaries of State, Treasury, Senators, House members, Tony Blair, Queen Noor, the Prince of Wales, on and on and on.
Does anybody really care about a book about Jake Tapper?
That's the point. And how do you price that? You know, in my world, pricing in businesses, it's, you know, when I sold Wilson Sporting Goods as an example, as an agent, it's how do you figure out how a company like that is worth? It was losing money. You know, to actually be worth something, you'd have to be able to turn it around. It's the variation between what the second bidder thought it was worth and what I sold it for was so wide that I don't want to say what it is. But I mean, you can have very wide variations. And a Jake Tapper book to me would be worth less than a candy bar.
Yeah, I think it's something you give away at a meeting with Jake Tapper.
Yeah, that's right. You give it to his kids or something. Right. But I mean, it's worthless. On the other hand, you can imagine that a book by Barack Obama, if it were really written by Barack Obama, might be worth two candy bars. Yeah, it would be worth two candy bars. But anyway,
did you know that Jack Cashel has suggested that and cites evidence that Bill Ayers wrote the Barack Obama autobiography?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've interviewed Jack Cashel. Yeah. I've read Jack Cashel books about that. Yeah,
he's great.
Yeah, good guy. So you look at this, and for starters, Barnett knew by July of 1993 that it was a safe bet for Williams and Connolly to extend credit to Bill Clinton. So they did. Maybe not because of Barnett's conclusion, but the leadership of Williams and Connolly said, all right, we'll advance money. We will not collect our bills to Hillary and Bill Clinton for all the work that we're now going to do. And I just think that is something that must be regulated. We see that it didn't work, right? We see that the Williams and Connolly was able to extend its influence, I would argue, because the whole swamp looked at this and said, you know what? This Williams and Connolly firm is a firm that's pretty cool. You know, if we get in trouble, we could work for free. They'll get us a book deal to pay their bill. And they work for Republicans and Democrats. This is Swamp Central.
I need to pull some of the footage from Julia X. I have some beautiful stereoscopic footage of swamps.
Do you? There you go. Okay. Yeah. So then this is as far as getting book deals is concerned. I smushed this thing together to fit it. It was actually 3 paragraphs. He's also one of the leading representatives of television news correspondents and producers. So what does that mean? That he has the ability to get contracts, expensive contracts for nimrods like Brian Williams. I happen to like Steve Doocy and Britt Hume, but you look at this, Neil Cavuto, you look at this long list, it's Republicans, it's Democrats, but most importantly, they list out the well-known names, they don't list out the deals that this guy gets for the producers. So Jim Acosta, you see, he's so powerful, he gets you a book deal. If you're going to evaluate these politicians as an anchor or a producer or whatever, he also covers that side. He makes sure that he is negotiating the deals for all these high paid people. And then I love the final one. Bob also represents former government officials in conjunction with their transitions to the private sector.
Yeah,
I love that. That means like, okay, you're gonna do this the easy way.
Well, he's an influence peddler.
Exactly. I mean, this to me, I look at this and I say, how is this guy's job actually described as being a lawyer?
Right.
I mean, this to me seems to be a money for influence conduit.
Charles, I think you might be even more aware of this than I, but there's a lot of lawyers who are in the business of knowing how to break the law.
Yeah, and that's got to change. I mean, that's really got to change. Now, to put this in perspective, occasionally, I mean, it could be that this guy's just a decent guy and playing everything by the rules and by the book, and it was his tax exempt department that kind of forgot to have bylaws adopted and forgot to get an employer identification number on October 23rd, 1997, shortly thereafter, forgot to hold an organizational meeting, forgot to make sure that the correct names forgot to make sure that the articles were cleaned up, forgot to make sure that the solicitation was correct, forgot to fill out the federal tax exemption correctly, forgot to file a tax return, forgot to do the state. I mean, it's possible that he's a forgetful guy.
Well, they also chose this tie.
Yeah, that's a tablecloth. I think that's part of one of Hillary's pantsuits or something.
That's one of those things where if you stare at it, it shoots out at you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy is storied career, very influential. He's built quite a business here, but I don't think anybody should be untouchable. And I do think that if you had, I'm recommending the Corsi, Roger Stone, Manafort approach to going after this guy, but I think you go into the record of what really happened when the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation was brought together. Why didn't it register in Washington, D.C., where it clearly was operating from? Why did Williams and Connolly extend so much credit to the Clintons? Why couldn't they? I mean, if they're going to do this, you would have thought they would have a decent tax-exempt department.
I'm going to do you a favor, and then someday maybe you'll do a favor for me, but that day may never come.
Exactly right. So there are law firms that have blown up, famous ones, quite a few of them,
Blown up in a good way?
No, I mean not physically,
Blown
but
up.
disappear. Like Couder Brothers was a very well-known firm, international firm. It just got vaporized. There are other
Due to
firms.
criminal activity?
I don't know about criminal activity in their case. I think they just had their expenses were a lot higher than their revenues, and they mismanaged or whatever. And there are firms that have been put out of business by the Justice Department. And I think there's not enough friction, particularly in a place like Washington, D.C., which is basically an independent semi-state that nobody seems to regulate,
Right.
that has enormous ability to terrorize opponents of that state by bringing up faulty criminal charges inside Washington, D.C., that then cause you to hire firms like Williams and Connolly to defend yourself against a jury that's predisposed to put you in prison for the rest of your life. So there has to be a rebalancing here. I hope it's coming soon. I love this poster. It's in a long line now of great posters. Well done.
Well, Charles, it's always frustrating when we have these technical problems, but I guess they're all just coincidental accidents, and we'll have to power through.
I'm sure we will, Jason, and I look forward to our next show.
Yeah, Sunday with Charles. We'll be back. I want to thank everybody for their patience through some of these frustrating delays, but we will be back on Sunday. I'll be back tonight with Lee Stranahan, another episode of High Dive at 8 p.m. Hopefully people will get to see this before that happens. I do want to thank the Patreon and Subscribestar sponsors that make this and every show on Crowdsource the Truth possible. If you're watching us today and you're not yet a sponsor, please keep in mind that these shows can't keep coming without your sponsorship. So please go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a sponsor. And also make sure you're subscribed to the Jason Goodman YouTube channel and Crowdsource the Truth too. For all I know, Charles, by the time we finish this broadcast, it might be at 90,000 subscribers on the Jason Goodman channel. I really would like to hit 100,000 before the summer. So if you're not subscribed, but you watch all the time, tap that subscribe button, hit the bell. You're going to get a notification when new videos come out. If YouTube is in the mood, we'll have to see. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night.